Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. I'm your host today, Bill Banham, and joining me on this episode is Shay David, co-founder, chairman, and CEO over at Retrain.ai, a talent intelligence platform designed to help enterprises hire, retain, and develop their workforce in intelligent ways. Shay, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Bill, so great to be here.
Thank you very much for being my guest. Why don't you start by telling our listeners a bit about yourself, your career background, and of course, the mission of Retrain.
So, Bill, again, thanks for the opportunity. Very excited to be here. My name is Shay David, Dr. Shay David. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Spent the last few decades building large-scale software products. Enterprise B2B SaaS last big project was a company called Kaltura, which was an enterprise video platform serving customers in both media and telecom as well as enterprise, anybody from Voice of America to Bank of America. So that was quite a nice experience growing and scaling that business from basically startup mode with 3 other co-founders from my living room up to NASDAQ IPO. So that kept me busy for a while. And prior to that, other companies, including Destinator, a GPS navigation company, and a few other projects. And then about 2.5 years ago, started Retrain.ai with 2 fantastic partners, Avi and Isabel, who are also very experienced and educated entrepreneurs. And we are excited to be solving what we believe, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this over the next few minutes and maybe half an hour about talent intelligence and the skills gap problem, and basically a solution that we believe is an important ingredient in solving the skills gap emergency that we see globally today.
Let's talk about something that gets me super excited, and I listen to loads of podcasts and whatnot on the walks with the dogs and going for a run and whenever else I can, and that's Chat GPT. It's going to change so many things in so many different industries, not least the world that I work in, and that's business media. How do you think Chat GPT has put a spotlight on generative AI? And maybe also you can share perhaps around, although it's arguably the most impressive chatbot yet, perhaps you could tell our audience how you think it compares to other generative AI tools out there, and is it similar or different from what you guys do over at Retrain?
Absolutely. So I was joking with the team earlier this week that Chat GPT is the marketing campaign that we could have never afforded. And I think that the reason I say that is because Chat GPT really brought to the headlines and kind of to the common imagination the true power of generative AI. In that sense, I think it's, for good or for worse, it puts right, left, and center the power of AI in the minds of the common people. I think that on the other hand, while generative AI is a transformative piece of technology, I think that it has both promise and peril. And I think that beyond the fascination of the first few days, when people started digging down into it, they saw a lot of the risks that are associated with this general purpose tools, including, I don't know if you saw that, ChatGPT proclaiming its love for some journalists and making factual errors. And that's true not only for we're using ChatGPT here as a scarecrow, but it's true for Google's version of it, which is called Bard, and for the Microsoft enterprise-grade version of ChatGPT, which is incorporated into its Bing engine. I think that those technologies are fascinating, and I think that they have huge potential. But generative AI is all about pre-training a model on very large corpuses of text. In that sense, it's a semantic set of technologies that learn from past text examples and basically generate, or another way of putting it, hallucinate an answer. And if the question is, help me find the best snowboarding sites in Europe, then maybe the answer is pretty straightforward. But if the question, just to go back to our topic of HR, for example, is how is this person fit for a job, then maybe that type of generative technology is not very helpful. And I think that soon enough we're learning that generative AI is no panacea and no pixie dust. It can learn from past examples and it can generate future responses, but it could also fall into the trap of inventing stuff that didn't happen. A good example of that, if people want to understand the risks of that, is give it two CVs of two different people and ask ChatGPT to format that CV for a particular company, and what you're going to start seeing that for different people, the answer is probably pretty similar. In other words, it takes two different candidates and makes them look sexy and the same. That, of course, is counterproductive if the objective is to hire the right person. On the other hand, it has tremendous potential. You can give it a simple job description and ask it to make it more descriptive. So I think it has promise and peril, and I think that people are going to have to learn to work with it. Then comes the set of questions about what makes a piece of technology enterprise ready. And I think that one of the things that make a big difference between consumer-grade technology and enterprise-grade technology is how the technology is packaged. ChatGPT or the Google version of ChatGPT, Bard, do not have any of the necessary requisites for enterprise consumability. They don't come with any sort of service level agreement. They might work, they might not. Nobody's going to sell you that service level agreement. They don't have any semblance of transparency. It comes back with an answer. You don't know where that answer came from. It has no way of explainability. So those like transparency, explainability, SLA, performance guarantee, those would be some absolutely fundamental dimensions for enterprises that are looking to consume the technology, and particularly in regulated industry, and particularly in industries like the HR tech industry, it actually might be illegal, definitely in the US and some states, to use this technology because there is no audit trail. And there are rules and regulations coming into sharp focus that prevent people from using AI for HR-related decisions if there's no audit trail and no transparency. So there's a kind of a big risk in using these types of technologies. All that being said, I think it whets the appetite. It shows us the huge power of AI. And it shows us that using these types of technologies, if we could add all of those requisite components, including SLA and transparency and explainability and audit trail, then we're beginning to understand the huge power that these technologies have.
Thanks for tuning in to the HR Chat podcast. If you're enjoying this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. And now, back to the conversation.
That was one of the most interesting answers to a question that I've heard on this show in a very, very long time. Thank you. I'm passionate about that.
Well, this is not me. This is our ChatGPT just wrote that for me. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I want to follow up on a couple of things you mentioned there. So one thing that I wanted to ask you about is if I understood what you said it's kind of not okay to make a resume. I think you used the term sexy, to improve it so it fits the language required by a particular employer. You used the example of 2 different resumes for 2 different employers. I think. Why isn't that okay? And isn't it really more about where the in-person interviewing part of it comes in? So if someone's got the gumption, they've got the confidence to use a tool like ChatGPT or Bart or another one of these tools to get them in front of the employer, that doesn't then give them a chance to wow them in the interview part of it and show them how resourceful they are.
Absolutely, and you're not going to hear me criticize the use of tools to make a CV, to use that same term, sexy. But in the investment world, there's this term of putting lipstick on the pig. So long as there's enough pig and not too much lipstick, that's okay. The question becomes a problem when there's more lipstick than pig, right? And the comment I made earlier is about sometimes these technologies, and again, the term generative is the operative word here. It generates the text. And the question is, How close is this to reality? I think people have a much easier time understanding this in the generative AI that is used for image creation. I was actually playing with it last night. And you can get pretty horrible results. So everybody saw this famous example, I think, about the generative imaging technology called DALL-E, also coming from OpenAI. And there was this famous example circulating in social media about an astronaut riding a horse on the moon or something like that. So it's clear to everybody that that is completely fictitious. I was playing with it last night, and I've asked it to draw pictures of salespeople, and to my horror, all of a sudden the image generator generates people with multiple hands, or people crossing their hands but also pointing at the same time, images that look completely messed up and completely fictitious. So when we see something like that in an image, you see a person with 3 hands, you understand that something went wrong in the generative AI. If you saw that in a CV, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And the technology underlying the generation of images and the generation of text is the same technology. So in images, it's very clear to us. In text, not so much. So I'm just pointing to the fact that sometimes there's great misaccuracies in the process of generating text, and that we have to be very careful from relying on that. That does not take away from the capability of taking existing text like a CV and dressing it up and highlighting or changing the tone of voice or adapting it to a specific task. Those are all fantastic uses of this generative AI technology. And in fact, I want to encourage my colleagues within the industry to really think about the question, which is, what are the tasks that AI is really good at, and what are the tasks that we should leave for humans?
Atlas is proud to be a supporter of the HR Chat podcast. Our company enables innovative companies to compete in a global economy, believing that businesses should employ whomever they want, wherever the talent exists. As the largest direct employer of record, Atlas is an expertise-enabled technology platform that delivers flexibility for companies to expand across borders, onboard talent, manage compliance, and pay their global workforce without the need for a local entity or multiple third-party providers. Learn more at atlaszxm.com.
So, as long as there is a human component, someone to, in my industry, to sub-edit and to fact-check, because Chat GPT is known for making stuff up as well, isn't it? Then that those are acceptable uses of a fantastic new tool, or are you saying we need to be more cautious than that?
I think that generally speaking, we need to be pretty cautious, but that caution does not need to be halting the industry, or we don't need to basically stop the development of the technology. We just need to be very cautious of the way that we're developing it, provide both enough internal checks and balances as well as probably some regulatory oversight. And I think that many people that have been thinking and writing about these technologies in the past have voiced their concern. Just to mention Elon Musk in their speech last week, saying about, hey guys, this is really dangerous technology. Let's continue to develop it, but let's make sure that we have the proper oversight over it, so that, again, with proper transparency and explainability and oversight and regulation, we understand what we're getting ourselves into. The other metaphor that kind of comes to mind, this comes from Nick Bostrom book, Super Intelligence. Highly recommend it for those who are interested in this topic. He uses a metaphor about the sparrows that are having a meeting discussing how hard the sparrow life is, and what if they could find some technology to help them with all the menial tasks that sparrows need to do. And one of the sparrows suggested they use owls instead, because owls are much more powerful birds than sparrows, and they could get a lot of the tasks done faster. And one of the sparrows says, but by the way, owls actually eat sparrows. And then the other sparrow said, yeah, that's right, but they are also very powerful creatures. So I think that's kind of where we are with this type of intelligence. It could make our life very simple, but it could also eat us alive if we're not careful. So I'm always of the opinion of proceed with caution. This is not a call to halt innovation. This is not a call to avoid technology. It's just a call to engage with a curious eye and making sure that we understand that these technologies are so powerful and they could be used, but they could also be misused. And we need to make sure as an industry and as users of this technology, and then at some point in the processes, together with governments and regulators, that we develop some minimum standards for both measuring the performance and evaluating the risks of these types of technologies.
In a previous answer, Shay, you mentioned bringing generative AI to the common people. I think is what you said. Given the huge numbers of Chat GPT users and bot users and other tools, how will it change the mindset of the average person or the average employee when it comes to using this kind of technology? Now it's out there. Now it's very much in the news. Now people are playing about with these technologies themselves. How's that going to change the perception?
For sure. So let me just qualify. When I mean the common people, I don't mean that they're common in any way other than they are not technology people. Most of the people that have experienced AI to date have been people that are themselves within the technology ecosystem, and they've been using AI and machine learning technology in order to incorporate these types of technologies into other products. Now we're getting to the point where AI is powerful enough and there's been enough applications so that people that are not technologists could use it. If Microsoft, for example, made a big investment in OpenAI and they're going to incorporate that in Bing Search, then now anybody using Bing Search is going to experience that. They don't need to program anything. They don't need to integrate. They don't need to install any special apps. That's what I mean by common people and common use. And I think we're getting to the point where AI is basically going to be incorporated in so many products that we're just going to use it on a daily basis. I think that when we understand the AI ecosystem, and we can use, again, examples from the HR tech and AI intersection, we need to understand that some people are developing baseline technologies, and that's like Chat GPT and OpenAI and Google's Lambda, and those are large language models. Those are the core technologies that enable AI. Some people, and I would include Retrain.ai in that category, are developing a model that is a layer on top of the basic language models. That it's not developing capabilities for, say, understanding human language, but it's developing capabilities within a specific domain. In our case, it's an HR tech domain and a skills framework. And then some people on top of that are developing specific applications. Those applications are specific tools that use all the underlying stack in order to generate some sort of consumer experience. A good example of that, again, in generative imaging, for example, is an application like Midjourney. So when we think about more people using it, it's because there's going to be more and more of those apps. Those are going to be tools that are not developing the underlying models, but they're using those underlying models to solve everyday applications. And that's where most of the people are going to meet AI for the first time, probably on their phones, maybe on their desktop, but over time, integrated into the fabric of our lives, in smart refrigerators and in smart cameras and in phones and in voice response systems and in air traffic control, or anything in the industry is probably going to have an application that relies on the underlying models of generative AI in the future.
So you've been talking around this concept then of responsible AI, and we've been hearing a lot about this, obviously, in the news, particularly as it relates to the new AI Audit Law coming to New York City in April, and others like it around the world. What does responsible AI look like to you? What if you could paint a picture for our listeners today, and also why is it important?
So in our case, just a few more words about our product. So what Retrain.ai is developing is a skills framework. It's a system and a model that's designed to understand jobs, people, and training pathways. Our objective is to enable large employers to hire faster, retain their best people longer, and develop and train their employee base and their talent base with the skills of the future. In order to do that, we've developed an AI model that feeds on billions of data points, including LinkedIn profile and job descriptions and CVs, and learns and creates a map of vocational opportunity and understands what are the skills, 21st century skills, that are required for each job, where does vocational opportunity exist, and how would both existing employees and new candidates match against that. We could do that at an employer level, at the state or country level, and then from a candidate or employee perspective at an individual level. Law relies on that same framework. In order for that to be a scalable solution, it needs to be completely responsible. And what we mean by that is that the responses of the system needs to be reliable, they need to be transparent, they need to be explainable, and they need to be safe enough so that they don't introduce biases. And part of why this audit law is coming into sharp focus in New York is there's been too many cases in the past where people tried to use AI for HR-related decisions, both on the pre-hire and post-hire side. And the AI, which is no more and no less than pattern recognition, basically, comes in and dramatically explodes the types of biases that exist in the organizations. There's been one specific case with a very large tech employer, I'm not going to name names, that wanted to introduce AI in order to increase the diversity of their team. And in most of these tech organizations, there's a bunch of white dudes working in R&D. So they feed the AI with examples, and guess what happens as a result? The AI looks at examples of who have these people been hiring and recommends new people to hire, but it only learns from example. So you introduce a bunch of white dudes as input, and you get a bunch of white dudes as output. So the exact opposite of the intention is happening. Instead of reducing bias, it introduces new types of biases and really makes those biases explode. The audit law is intended to put a check and balance on that. So it says, if you want to use this type of technology, you have to be able to explain why did the algorithm make that type of recommendation. And when you have to explain things, all of a sudden, it makes you want to check the algorithm better. So we think that that's actually a very welcome law, and it's probably just one of a series of laws that should come in. The capability to audit the systems is fundamental. Most of the technologies that you have in the field today are black box solutions. You put input, you get an output. There is no way, not for the system, not for the people that design the systems, definitely not for the end users, to even understand why those recommendations were made. And that is mostly based on a very rudimentary design and basically bad design. Systems that are responsible and explainable by design should be able to not only give you the capability to audit the decisions within the system, but actually explain them, trace back every step of the way, and to say, this is why the system came up with a specific response. And if you can't do that, it's probably not a good enough system to use. And unfortunately, many of the systems in the market today are like that. We see that in many domains, not only in HR tech, but there are sentencing systems used in the judicial system, and there are organ transplant prioritization systems used in hospitals, and there are definitely systems in HR tech. I'm just using 3 very different examples to show that the risk of bias is fundamental. If people are getting an organ donation or people are getting their sentences commuted based on some AI recommendation system that we cannot audit and cannot explain, then good luck to all of us, right? And now that these systems have a potential impact in HR tech, it's high time that these regulations come to the fore, because there's going to be a tremendous change in our industry because of these technologies. And we are trying to promote the view that if we're going to have that change, we might as well have it with systems that are explainable, transparent, and auditable. Otherwise, the biases are just going to be too expensive.
Okay, I like it. So I guess the next question for you is, what's next for your team? How are you going to continue to fight the good fight, Shay? And what's the vision for Retrain in 2023, 2024 and beyond?
So our mission is to really help large employers solve the skills emergency. We believe that the skills gap is truly an emergency. I call that an emergency because on one hand, 77% of Fortune 500 CEOs report access to skilled labor as their number one limiting factor for growth. The short version is people cannot get enough skilled laborers. And skilled labor, we think about pilots and nurses as skilled labor, but skilled labor is up and down the skills ladder. People that can drive long-haul trucks are also skilled laborers, and assistant nurses are skilled laborers, and there's just a shortage of talent across the board, in retail, in healthcare, in financial services, in tech. It's not just programmers and pilots and nurses. So our mission is to help tens of millions of people find meaningful employment by being able to overcome the skills gap. Because at the same time that Fortune 500 CEOs are having a hard time hiring skilled labor, there are millions of people sitting at home and they're not even considered job seekers because they gave up on looking for jobs because they do not have 21st century skills. So that's the tragedy, and it's both kind of a two-sided tragedy. Employers cannot get enough people, people can't get enough work. How could both of those statements be true at the same time? Because of the skills gap. And our mission is to help solve that skills gap. So 2023 for us is all about scale. We've been working at stealth for the last 3 years developing this technology. We developed what I believe is the most robust, actionable, granular, largest ever skills framework. And that technology is now being put to good use. We worked with several very large-scale design partners over the last few years to iron out the kinks in the system and to put it into production. And now 2023 for us is about finding scale. So we're working with the largest of the large, I'm not going to name names, but some of the largest retailers, healthcare companies, consumer packaged goods companies, and many other in different industries to really bring this technology to work. We're also working with several governments in different places around the world to bring this gospel to consumers. And I think it's all about scale. 2024 for us is going beyond that and connecting that stack also to the development stack and to the education stack so that people could start learning new 21st century skills. So in that sense, I think, what we're developing is the Chat GPT of the HR tech world or the labor market. It's bringing the power of generative AI to the masses so that tens of millions of people could really use the power of generative AI to not only make their CV look better, but to actually understand what their skills gap are so they can find better jobs, whether they're with an existing employer or looking for a job opportunity elsewhere, and be able to get personalized career pathways, personalized training pathways, and leave to AI what AI does best, which is to help find the patterns so that the people could do what the people do best, which is to use their human potential and to maximize it. All of that for their employers' benefit, so that both the employers benefit and the individuals benefit by being able to move core HR processes into the language of skills. So I guess you can say we got our plate full, and I'm very excited for this future.
And just finally, before we do wrap up for today, how can our listeners connect with you, Shay? So maybe that's through LinkedIn, maybe you want to share your email address, maybe all over TikTok and places. And of course, how can they learn more about Retrain.ai? And I guess as part of that, they'll be going on their journey then to make sure that they're putting more lipstick than pig on their processes.
Exactly. Absolutely. So first of all, again, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the listeners. I think the best way to find out more and request a demo is Retrain.ai and just ask for a demo. I'm always happy to talk with partners, with customers, with the general public or anybody that wants to learn more. So my email is shay.david, shay.david@retrain.ai. Send me an email, find me on LinkedIn, connect with us on our website, come see a very cool demo that I think is going to blow your mind, because this is really bringing the power of AI in a responsible and explainable way to this market. And we are always looking for opportunities for large employers that want to use this technology, for partners that want to resell this technology, for government agencies that want to understand the power of AI in a responsible way. We're all for that. So any opportunity, please bring them our way, and we're happy to support.
Okay, rock and roll. And that just leaves me to say for today, Shay, thank you very much for being my guest on this episode of the HR Chat Show.
Thank you, Bill. It's always a pleasure listening to you, and it's my honor to be here tonight. And good night.
And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.